So what I want to teach you today is it's the culmination of the introductory course, the 10-week introductory course. And wow, we've made it, eh? Here we are, the 10th lesson. And it's kind of liminal, is what I guess what I want to say. I put it here because it acts as the capstone, but it's also the thing that bridges you into more advanced practice. So this is a practice you should start doing, and I'll explain how to schedule it in a few minutes. But this is a practice that really, its growth depends on how all the other practices underneath it are growing. So it grows very, very slowly, as you can imagine. So you have to be extremely patient and take a big picture view with respect to what I'm going to teach you. So what I'm going to teach you is a Prajna practice. This is also known as a non-duality practice. So Prajna, right, it means wisdom, right? But it means a particular kind of wisdom. It means sort of self-liberated intelligence, but not intelligence in sort of the holding of propositions or belief, but the ability to see, right, through illusion and into what's real, and to be able to unlock the world and your identity in such a way that you are much more appropriately fitted to it. Think about what a wise person can do. It's not so much necessarily that they have a lot of factual knowledge, although that can help. What happens is they can come into a situation and very dynamically, and think about mindfulness, being connected. They are very mindfully connected to themselves, to the situation, and to other people involved in this situation. And they know how to, in all of this tangled, ill-defined mess, zero in on the relevant information and not just see it, but also, right, co-identify with it, think of meta, so that they are most appropriately fitted to it. And you have that kind of self-liberating intelligence, insight capacity. So it's not, we don't have a single word in English that captures it really well. That's why I like to use the Sanskrit term prajna, that it's an enacted, dynamic, right, wisdom that is realized in an enhanced capacity to see through self-deceptive behavior and to connect to the world in a deep and adaptive manner. It's where it's what results out of all, remember I studied when you're the Eightfold Path, you have all these rights, like right understanding, better, right vision, right aspiration. And the right isn't moral right. It's the dexterity of the right hand. It's getting an optimal grip on things, if you remember. So that's what prajna is. Prajna is sort of having a comprehensive, flowing, optimal grip in all situations. Now, of course, that would be this. If that became your permanent second nature, that might, in fact, be one way of thinking of what it would mean to be enlightened. What we are looking for is, first of all, how can we train it, and how can we bring it much more into our awareness? So that's very sort of philosophical and abstract. Let's make it a little bit more concrete. Let's go back to one of our primary metaphors. Remember, we talked about, normally we were looking through the mind. We're always framing the world in a certain way, foregrounding some things, backgrounding other things, creating patterns of salience, how things stand out to us. And as we've talked about that repeatedly, this framing is often completely transparent to us. We're doing it automatically, mindlessly, reactively. But what we can do with Vipassana is we can learn to step back and look at that framing, become aware of the patterns and processes of our mind, and notice anything that might be a potential distortion. Get more clarity about it, bring more acuity to it. All the stuff we've been practicing. And then, how do I know if I've actually corrected the distortion? Well, then I have to put my glasses back on, and like in metta, I have to look deeply into the world and see if I can see the world anew, if I can unlock, right, my identities and the identities of things, if I can turn my existential mode into the being mode, in which I and the world are being reciprocally opened, like you do when you're falling in love with somebody. This is a kind of love, of course. This is not sexual, erotic love. This is the kind of love that is captured by words like karuna, compassion, right? The word compassion is a little bit problematic. We'll come back to that a little bit later when we move on to some further lessons. So This is what you do in an insight. Insight has sort of three components to it. There is a movement that breaks an inappropriate frame, and then there's a movement that makes a more encompassing, more well-fitted, more right-handed, more dexterous, more octavely gripping frame. And so when you're actually studying insight as a phenomenon, you know, when you have an aha moment, and I do that scientifically at U of T, it's made up of these sort of three. What are the three components? There's the breaking frame and the making frame, and then there's the flexibility to move between them. So breaking frame, making frame, and how flexible are you in being able to do that transformation? So what does that mean in practice? Well, it means in practice that we want to do something that's going to get those two motions at work in a coordinated fashion, and that is training the flexibility between them by having us constantly flip and reverse between them. That's how you do flexibility. You constantly reverse your direction, right? And you try to extend the range and the fluency and the speed of your ability to reverse direction. Okay, so this is what we're going to do now. Okay, I'm going to describe this practice to you. Don't start doing it right now, and because I also want to give you some things to look for, both positively, like things that help you sort of understand what's going on, and then also negatively, things to watch out for, to avoid. Now, for about 80% of the people, I've been teaching this for a long time, the way I'm going to describe it works for them. About 20% of the people, it's reversed. They have to do it the opposite way. And so you're going to have to also experiment with this a couple sets to see which one takes for you. So for the statistically normal group, this is what it's like. As you inhale and you feel your abdomen expanding, you do that extension of awareness outward in metta. But you try and take metta as sort of broadly, maybe you've been doing it towards all people, now maybe towards all being. And right, and it's like flow, not just broadly, but deeply. You're trying to extend it towards all beings and really unlock the potential of the world to be other than you currently see it as. It's a kind of insight. And then as you exhale, you do Vipassana, and you do that Vipassana that I taught you where you try and go to the very center, right? That space between your thoughts, the silent mind. So you're moving towards sort of the mysterious ground of the psyche in Vipassana and opening up to the mysterious ground of the world in metta. And then what you're doing is flowing between them. You're flowing between them. So for 80% of the people, as you inhale, metta out. As you exhale, Vipassana in to the space between your thoughts. Now, the flexibility will be lacking, right? So what does that mean? Well, you'll say, in half a breath, I won't get much metta. That's right. That's right. In half of a breath, will I be able to get most of that? No. You're just going to move towards it. Flexibility means, and this is what will take a lot of time just to get the flexibility, is that in the inhale, you're able to realize deep metta. And in the exhale, you're able to realize deep Vipassana. This takes time. You're not initially flexible. So you will only get a shallow sense of metta and a shallow sense of Vipassana. That is fine. That will take time. That is fine. That will take time. Now, in connection with that, here's something to avoid. In order to extend the time so that they have more time to trying to get deeper into metta and deeper into Vipassana, people start to hyperventilate. I'm exaggerating so you know what I mean. It's very, very important. This practice is the one that is most susceptible to hyperventilation, and it will make you lightheaded. It's not good for you. So you have to be vigilant that you are not hyperventilating. You have to leave your breathing alone and let it flow naturally. You want prajna to be something that flows naturally in you, not something that only is arrived at when you force things to an extremity. Okay, so really on guard, really accepting that this is going to initially be, I don't have the flexibility. So initially, shallow metta, shallow vipassana, just whatever taste I can get of both. And not hyperventilating. You'll do this for a long time. For a long time, all you're going to be doing is developing the flexibility. Now notice that prajna is only as good as you are practicing metta and deep vipassana. And trying to extend metta a little bit farther, by the way. Like if you've only been going up to like people, maybe all sentient beings, and then after a while more beings, okay? So it's very crucial that the progress that you're looking for initially is just that in a natural, unforced breath, I can move into deep metta. So I have to be practicing metta a lot, and I have to be doing this a lot before that will occur. And then in the out breath, I get into deep vipassana, right? So I have to be practicing vipassana a lot, deep vipassana, and practicing this prajna practice a lot before that will happen. So that's going to take a long time. Once they both are deep, right, then you'll just be there for a while, just getting the flexibility to become very second nature, that flow. Then what starts to happen is you start to get a foreground background thing. So while I'm sensing metta, I still have a background awareness of the depth of vipassana that I was touching. And then it goes like this. It starts to go like this. And then I start to be able to feel them both active in my breath. This takes a long time. And then it's all at once. Simultaneously as deeply out and as deeply in. Mystery to mystery, ground to ground, the deepest possible reciprocal opening, the deepest resonance. You're in the state, right, of non-duality. Your awareness is not subjectively oriented or objectively oriented. It's transjectively oriented. This is the place that is optimal for optimizing your optimal grip, for affording deep, deep insight, not just intellectual insight, but insight at the very level of the identity of yourself and the world. This is a fundamentally liberating form of intelligence insight, prajna. This will not be something that happens to you tomorrow, next week, next month, maybe not even this year, okay? This takes a long time before it comes in. That's what I mean when I said this practice is liminal. You can start it with an introductory set of skills. That's because you have to start somewhere. But you will go through these stages for a very long time. All you will be doing is developing the flexibility. Then you will start to develop some of the simultaneity, and then you will get the gestalt of prajna. And then more and more, as you practice that, it will be there, available to you. And it will start to presence itself to you. So, now, you should think of yourself having this kind of practice. Always, one day, start with basic vipassana, do basic vipassana, and then lead into deep vipassana. Next day, do metta, trying always and gradually to be extending metta. Third day, prajna. Do that twice, so you get 3 and 3, okay? Vipassana, basic into deep, metta, deepening it, prajna. And then again, vipassana, basic into deep, metta, deepening it, and prajna. On the 7th day, do one of the other things, like perhaps meditative questing, in order to refine and enhance inquiring mindfulness. Okay, so that's the practice. Don't rush into it. I recommend doing some, basic Vipassana first, reminding yourself, sati, enacted remembering. Oh yeah, this is what Vipassana feels like. Then a bit of metta, perhaps your most extensive metta that you have been practicing regularly. And push it, remember, not just as wide as possible, but as deep. You're trying to really do as much reciprocal opening, remembering the being mode as much as you can. Do some metta for a while. And then come back to Vipassana and do the deep Vipassana. Space between your thoughts. And then in breath, deep metta, out breath, deep Vipassana. Accepting that it will be shallow, not as deep as when I can sit with each for a long time, and not hyperventilating. So we'll sit for about 15 minutes. Maybe, after you've done your center and rooting, 2 or 3 minutes. I won't time you through it. Just do it intuitively, right? A few minutes in basic in Vipassana, then deep metta, return to deep Vipassana, and then go into Prajna. Don't hyperventilate. Don't hyperventilate. Don't hyperventilate. Understand that the metta in a half breath and the Vipassana in a half breath are going to be much shallower than when you can follow them completely with a whole breath for a complete 15 minutes. It takes a long time to develop the flexibility. Review what we talked about yesterday, and also answer sort of a couple of questions that I did forewarn about, but let's do it more explicitly. So we're moving towards Prajna, this dynamically self-organizing form of self-liberating intelligence, consciousness, wisdom. And it involves 3 things. It involves the deepest Vipassana on an in-breath, to break frame, the deepest metta, an out-breath. The deepest Vipassana on an out-breath as you're really breaking frame, the deepest metta on an in-breath as you're really making frame, and the movement for cognitive flexibility between them. Reminder that because you're training a cognitive flexibility that you probably have not developed that much, the depth of the metta and the depth of the Vipassana will be quite shallow. They deepen over time. So first what happens is they deepen over time, you get that flexibility, and then they start happening in parallel, and then you get simultaneity, you get Prajna, non-duality, which is the place that is optimal for our deepest kinds of insightful adaptivity, all the rights, the right-handedness, the optimal gripping of the world. Some of you said it felt intuitively obvious to do the reverse. And I did mention that the way I had explained Prajna was the case for about 80% of the people. And I've been teaching this for a long time. This ratio is pretty reliable. But 80% of the people, you're doing metta on the in-breath and Vipassana on the out-breath. But for about 20%, it seems intuitively the other way, because they're not so much feeling the expansion of the chest, they're feeling the flow of the breath. And so when they're inhaling, they want to do Vipassana. And when they exhale, because the breath is going out, they want to do metta. That's fine. That's the 20% I was talking about. So experiment with which one went with you. And that's the way you should practice. Okay? All right, so remember, go into this, do basic Vipassana, then, do some basic metta, but try to deepen the metta, deepen the Vipassana. The order of this, you can flip those around. You want always start with the basic Vipassana. You might then want to go first into deeper Vipassana and then go into deep metta, or you want to do basic Vipassana, deep metta, deep Vipassana. That's fine, as long as you always start with the basic Vipassana to answer another bunch of questions. And then once you've remembered the taste of the depth of metta and the taste of the depth of Vipassana, begin the Prajna practice. Always remembering, being especially vigilant to not hyperventilate. Everything else the same. When they're distractions, stand back and label it with an ing word. Apply the 5 factors of inquiring mindfulness, the 3 principles of how you work with distraction. Return to your breath, and then go back into prajna. All right?